I'm proud and excited to announce that the new book, Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, is now available. I've put the links to grab your copy from Amazon worldwide in the show notes, and I can't wait to see what you think. As a thank you for listening to the podcast, email podcast@rntfitness.com with your receipt, and we'll send you the free ebook version to start reading immediately. If you like a sneak peek of what's inside, you can download the first chapter at rntfitness.com/book. Also, you've heard me talking about the power of journaling for a long time, so I'm happy to announce we've now got customized RNT journals in store. There's a mix of prompts and freestyle writing, which you can take a glimpse of on rntfitness.com/journal. Just a quick one before we get into this episode. If you're in the UK and you use supplements, I'd highly recommend checking out Reflex Nutrition, where they're giving up to 40% on all their range if you use the code PTRNT at checkout. I've been using Reflex for nearly a decade, with their microwave being one of my favorite whey proteins. It's grass-fed, hormone-free, and digests so well compared to most on the market. Check out their full supplement range, including all your transformation basics and plant-based alternatives on reflexnutrition.com, and use the code PTRNT at checkout for up to 40% off. Welcome back to another episode of RNT Fitness Radio, where I'm joined by writer and podcaster Alex Reed in an inspiring and candid conversation covering topics around mental health, spirituality, being a black millennial, writing, journaling, feminism, and how many of the answers to the world's biggest problems are already there for us in books, essays, and literature. Alex is in the process of writing his first book, Time to Talk, and I highly recommend following along his journey to publication. I hope you enjoy this episode. So welcome, Alex, to RNT Fitness Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So one of the things we've been talking a lot about off air and even in our past conversations has been about writing and writing books. And I know yourself, you're an avid writer, and having spoken to you and seen some of your work, one of the things you said, which always sort of hits home at me when I read it from you, is you said writing saved your life. Can you expand on that? Like how's it saved your life?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think actually it's really, really interesting. It's just that when I was 17, 18, my dad gave me a moleskin notebook, and he was basically like, if you want to be a writer, you should have a notebook on you at all times. So he got this notebook for me, and he just said, look, writing this and whatever. And I still got, and ever since then, 2011, I've had a notebook each year. That was a moleskin one. And when I say it saved my life, I mean, it gave me the permission to be able to kind of like write the things that I wanted, that I was feeling and thinking, and kind of really navigate where my mind was at. And it gave me the opportunity to really talk to myself through really painful and really difficult moments growing up. When I say growing up, I do mean early 20s and that stuff, and growing up in that space. And I still do. I still use it as a place to kind of get my thoughts down and get my thoughts out. And I worried sometimes about what it would have been like if I didn't have that, if I didn't have those kind of that kind of medium to write the things that I wanted to get off my chest and put into something that I could then look back on and really see the difference from 2011 to say 2016 and 2016 to 2020, and kind of have a broad understanding of who I am and who I've become throughout that time. And so while, the book, the writing didn't like capture me and stop me from falling off a particular platform, or, really didn't stop me from kind of, it didn't pull me back from the dangers of the road or the dangers of life. What it did was it gave me the freedom to write my story and kind of really write the things that are really affecting me at that time and in those spaces. And yeah, like I'm really grateful to that first notebook that I had, that supported me in just really getting used to kind of writing short stories and writing, like diary entries and and figuring out where I was at each stage in life. I got around to, it became a thing where I started to title each notebook based on where I was at in life. So I have 2011 to 2012. And then there was one which was the whole year was graduation. I was at the graduate, like I'd kind of named them like albums, I guess. 2013 to 14 was graduation, and 14 to 15 was flight, because after graduation in 2014, I went abroad and I studied and I taught English. And it was an experience that kind of like really just kind of learning and exploring kind of who I was and and kind of channeling the experiences that I'd had at uni and kind of putting it into the real world now, and just being that fresh graduate. It was a really writing kind of it just helped me. It helped me really get to the heart of who I was, and it still is, to be honest.
What's your writing practice?
In what sense do you mean?
Do you have a ritual around it? Do you plan time for it? How do you do it?
So I journal every day. That's just let me get in my wildest thoughts out of my head. I use a practice called the morning pages. So each morning I write down. I spend I don't even know how long it is. I think it's around half an hour just writing out all of my thoughts, everything onto the page. At least I think around 2 A4 pages in an exercise book. And using that, it just kind of clears my mind for the rest of the day. It clears all the energy out of me, like all the negative sleep, the negative thoughts, carries the dreams over, all these different stuff that it just kind of it really gets it out of my hair sort of thing. And that was kind of coined by a writer called Julia Cameron in her book, The Artist's Way. And I've just been using that practice each morning. But that's like to get the free flowing writing out. And then I read for around an hour, or I read a chapter of a book that I'm into. And then I write for an hour, and it's a focused writing of something that I'm working on. For example, like if I say I'm going to write a personal essay on music, for example, I say I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write that essay. I'm going to just spend the time really like writing it, going through it, interrogating each sentence, each word, like making sure that it flows nicely, making sure I've got the right story there. And I do that every day because I want to make sure that I'm getting to grips with the craft and making sure that I know what I'm doing. Although you never really know what you're doing in life, I've come to that conclusion. But it is a nice practice to kind of really get me to actually write each morning, and then throughout the day I just end up meandering little notes here and there, and just kind of, but it gets everything out of me in the morning, and it can kind of set me up for the day.
So your journaling is very much free flow. Your practice writing is more directional. Yeah. What sort of topics are you exploring in your personal essays and your writing? Because I know you speak quite openly about a lot of topics. Can you share some of the different topics you speak about?
Yeah, I write mainly, I've been looking at writing about mental and emotional wellness. And that covers topics around anxiety, that covers topics around the family, around childhood, around life, pretty much. Recently, I've been looking at grief as a conversation that not many people are having, and not many people understand. So I'm kind of working myself through that to figure out what I understand and what I don't understand about grief, personally. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff that I'm writing about. I'm writing about the things that happen within us, the things that happen in the world within us, and I'm pretty much just really interrogating a lot of really intense emotions all the time. Just kind of really getting to grips with who they are, what they want to represent. I had a moment where I was really up against anger, like really up against them. And I didn't really like what anger was showing in me. But I think the more that I've been reading and the more that I've been writing around it, I've been coming to understand where anger sits and why. And it's just, and those are the kind of things that I write about, just typically the emotional life, emotionality, I would say.
Just let's touch a bit more on that, on the aspects of grief and anger. Like, what are you exploring here? You're saying you're up against an emotion. Talk to us about, well, what are you finding in these? Because I don't hear many people talking about anger. During what's going on, people aren't talking about grief. Share some of these insights.
Yeah, I disagree. I feel like a lot of people are talking about anger now, and a lot of people are talking about grief. I mean, with regards to Corona, a lot of people have lost people, and they can't attend the funerals. And a lot of people have lost grandparents, and they can't attend their funerals, and lost people that they love, like their own age, and they can't attend their funerals because of the rules and restrictions around that. That's one thing. And then another thing that you're grieving is the life you had before. The life we had before, where we could freely go out without worry. Where we could go on holiday if we wanted to. We can go everywhere and do anything we wanted, pretty much. If you're in this part of the world anyway, you could literally just, within reasonable restrictions, go out and go wherever you wanted to. And I think that people are grieving those kind of things. They're grieving those freedoms, and that's why we have a lot of people who are struggling with the notions of having to wear a mask, because they just don't want to have to concede to the fact that things are changing. And we have that kind of level of grief. We have that understanding of, when you are nostalgic and there's a point in history you want to go back to that you can never return to. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Like there's like, we all have those moments where we are thinking about something, and a particular time when we were 12 that was really great, and we can't get back to that moment. We just can't get there. Like, we literally will never be able to go there. And if we do go there, it might not be the same as it was when we thought it was, looking at it from a 28-year-old's perspective now. So there's that. So that's grief. Anger, with regards to I'm just using the current topics that are out in the world now, but even if we look at what happened, the reasons for the Black Lives Matter movement's resurgence, in a sense, the kind of the killings of Black men, Black women, Black trans men, Black trans women, just Black people, by the systems that are, by their very purpose, meant to protect us, has caused an indignation. An unjust kind of feeling. And that is where a lot of anger comes from, when there has been an injustice somewhere that has not been resolved. So I've been looking at anger completely differently, because I always understood anger to be an irrational, like, emotion relating to fear. And I guess in some places it is, and I'm still in the process of figuring it all out. Like, I have no idea whether this is even right or not. But from what I have experienced and what I understand it to be, it can be your fear presented in a particular way. That's in anger. But I think there is a use of anger that can, when tailored in the right way and when channeled in the right way, can create some amazing change. When tailored in the wrong way, can devastate a lot of things. And I just really looking at anger and really figuring out where I sit in it.
You experience a lot of anger in everything that's been happening with regards to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, it's an anger. it's an anger that a lot of Black people have been feeling just forever, to be perfectly honest. So it's pretty much a thing where the class bully finally gets revealed, and the people that have been bullied for ages, and everybody is just shocked that that's the bully, and the people that have been bullied for ages are we've gone past anger, we've gone past reaction, and we've gone past it all. We're over it. It's exhaustion. So it's not so much anger, because I do get bouts of just hating everything, hating the way that the system is, hating the way it treats minorities, hating the way it treats Black people, hating everything, hating the way it treats women, everything. And I'm just and then it just gets to the stage where you're just well, this is really exhausting. I really just want to just try and enjoy today. I want to eat my Greg's bun or something, and I just want to just watch something on Netflix and just enjoy this moment while I can, because I have the privilege to enjoy this specific moment. We can look at anger tomorrow or in the next hour or something, But yeah, it's a process, and it doesn't mean that I don't look at things like joy, and I don't look at things like happiness, and I look at excitement and all these other emotions. I just really, I just look at the ones that kind of that people really struggle to understand, and the difficult emotions are ones that people really struggle to kind of comprehend.
Yeah. You said you talk about mental and emotional well-being. Talk about the differences in the two.
Okay, so in mental and emotional well-being, I think there's not much of a difference between the two in my personal perspective, but I look at emotional well-being very specifically to do with how we relate to one another, the conversations we have, when things that kind of make us feel emotionally safe, get us to places where we feel that our emotions are heard and we can really understand how we are doing emotionally. So one of the things that I look at with regards to emotional awareness is, obviously, as I said, it's the morning pages, it's the journaling, it's really doing the reading and learning and really figuring out and empathizing and learning kind of the elements of communication and trying to figure out how to have those conversations, how to have difficult conversations with people, really challenging and really interrogating myself about how I feel about particular things and check in with me to know that I'm doing okay, and that my emotional life is right. And in a way, this feeds into mental health, and addressing kind of what makes me anxious, what gets my anxieties up. Am I distressed? Why am I distressed? Why am I stressed in itself? When I am on social media and things pop up, I have a visceral reaction, what is it? What is causing me to feel overburdened? What is it? What is that sort of stuff? So they are both pretty much one and the same thing, but I just kind of I just have them both there as a way to just to show how connected they both are. Because I would never say mental and emotional health is together as a phrase for me,
Do you think it's sorry, you speak about a lot of it for men. You talk about mental and emotional well-being for men, and that it's not spoken about enough. And I think the title of your upcoming book is how men feel about love, belonging, and connection. Why is it such a taboo with men, or do you think it's improving? Why do men need this conversation to happen more and more?
I'll throw that back at you just to see where you stand with that. What do you think about? What do you think about love, belonging, connection?
I mean, on the topic of on men speaking about that, I think it's there's two ends of the spectrum. There's the idea that speaking about love, belonging, and connection makes you look soft, and then there's the other spectrum of kind of the man who's beating his chest, and that you can either be one or the other. And if you're not on the potentially softer side, you're not seen as a man. And if you're, and only a man can be on the right side. And the reality is, it's neither, both. It's somewhere along the continuum, and it's about finding that and having. I think what with men, they struggle completely with that softer side, and they struggle with having those conversations. And I think even just the fact that me and you are talking about this is helping, because there's a lot of men out there who want to speak to someone and talk about why they don't feel like they can connect with others, or why they don't feel like they belong, or why they don't have love for themselves or be able to share love with others. But having written a book on it, I'd love to know your thoughts on what you kind of found on this.
It's it's one of them. It's like, I find that when I have these conversations with people about men and the way that they kind of like deal with it, because obviously I can't speak for all men. I don't know every single man. I don't know. All I can do is look at myself, and also just the men that I'm around and the men that I've encountered. And it's difficult for a lot of people. It's difficult for a lot of people because of the conditioning that we have as men in this country, and in the West in general. And it is what you say, like there's a spectrum of love, I guess. For example, if you keep it to yourself or you show it all, and only one of those is considered manly. And belonging is pretty much about like your friendships and your family, and do you feel like you are secure in those places? And then connection is how you really get to know people, and how you really, and I don't really want to have to use the word, but how you really connect with people. Are you communicating? Are you sharing? Are you vulnerable? Like, what is it that you're doing when it comes to those things? And it's difficult because it starts with us as boys. We're not conditioned as boys to really have the emotional intelligence and awareness of others as well as ourselves. It is a thing where we are really pushed to suppress all of that. We're pushed to suppress it because it doesn't fit into the wider sphere of how society wants us to be. There are few men who fit in those categories, and then they get kind of pushed into particular careers, or they get pushed into particular directions in the world. But most cultures and most families, and they're just doing what they have been programmed to do for like generations, you know. I'm sure you probably heard it from, say, your dad or your uncles or cousins or brothers or whatever, and you've heard certain things in conversation and in passing that I've probably felt a bit, that's a bit odd to say. And I've just always found it weird, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's really surprising how I've come to this as a book to then write it. But I know that I've always found it weird. I've always found it weird that I must like football. I've always found it weird that I must like rap. I've always found it weird that I must study business, economics, maths, or science. I've always found that strange, when I've always been somebody who has been creative or who doesn't really like spend time watching sport. I like playing it. I don't necessarily like being part of a tribe that allows me, like, a real football supporter, for example. I always found that weird, and I've always found that strange. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming from in the book. Like, I just find it really weird that men have to do this X, Y, and Z. And I started speaking to people who feel the same. And then that was a nice feeling of belonging, to be perfectly honest with you.
How do you feel about it now?
I do think about it because for all intents and purposes, I'm still here in this country and in this society, and you work with what you've got. So yeah, I do think about it a lot. And I do feel sometimes, why don't I just become a lawyer and just stay there? Or I do question whether I am doing the right thing a lot of the time. But also, that's very fleeting. It doesn't last long. It's pretty much like, yeah, cool. This is what I want to do. I made a decision, and also it's something that I've always wanted to do. Always wanted to write about stuff. Always wanted to write about important things that have been important to me. And hopefully I can connect with people who feel the same way. And that's the best I can do, in this situation.
Yeah, I think as a creator, having a purpose that's internally driving you is so critical to be able to cut out the noise that's out there, and be able to take the courage and have faith in taking that road less traveled that you probably feel like you're taking every day.
Yeah.
And knowing that it's going to be worth it. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that's a man thing or generally?
But taking the road less traveled.
Yeah, you said that you're talking in the context of men. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a man thing or not. I'm becoming more and more averse to these traditional ideas of like what men do and what men don't do, and what women do and what women don't do. Yeah. I'm becoming more and more anti just boxing in that regard, because it just seems self-limiting, doesn't it? Like, it just seems like we have to continue to play this game in this wider context of life. And it's just like, well, how about you just let people just express how they want to express, really, and just do what they want to do. And I don't know, this road less traveled, I guess. It's like men have a particular pass in the world, which allows them to pretty much do anything they want. It's just that when you add black or brown to that situation, these paths less traveled become very narrow, and you're just like, and you have to battle to get through that gate because what is expected of you is financial security. What is expected of you is so many other things that just come with the. I mean, like, we're not. I don't know. In most ethnic minorities, we're not raised to be writers, I guess, but we have a lot of storytellers in our families, and I don't understand why we're not raised to be writers of any kind, because there's so many stories that are there, but and every story that I found of like a black writer or an Asian writer, it's just they've decided that's just what they want to do, and they either end up doing something they don't want to do first, and they kind of pull out of that. And then they go into doing what they really want to do, and they excel in that way. I don't know. I just think it's one of them things where I can only ever speak from a perspective of a black person and from my own personal story, and we're not all the same. We all don't have the same experiences, and I'm just trying a thing, as I always say.
Yeah, you say. The conversation changes as soon as you add black and brown into it all. Yeah. Speaking from your own experiences, how does the conversation change being a black millennial man living in this world? What are the different conversations that happen as a result of it?
Well, we're taught to, taught not to touch things when we're outside of the house. Taught to look over our shoulder all the time. Taught to be wary of other people because fundamentally they don't like us. Growing up, when you hear this, you're just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, it's the recklessness of youth, I guess. And then you see things like the London riots happen and Mark Duggan killed. And then you see things like Sheikh Ubayu in Scotland, Sierra Leonean man killed, police custody. And you see a hell of a lot of things on the internet where just Black people are dying just across the world. And that's how it changes. Do we have a right to life? Sure. It just means that you just got to be hell of aware that some people don't think you do.
If you had the opportunity to speak to government or speak to the people in charge who have influence, what would you want to tell them?
Resign. And bring some people who know what's actually going on in this country to the table, please. Because there's just no trust, is there? There just isn't any trust at all, and it just becomes quite frustrating to see people talk about things but don't talk about things plainly. With regards to our leader, he was dancing around what we should be doing with this corona, giving people ambiguous instructions. And then you've got people who enforced the lockdown, breaking it, and all these different things. It's farcical. It just kind of makes me think. I don't know what I would tell them. I'll just ask them, are they okay? Like, what is going on? What is actually going on? Like, what do you see when you step outside and you look at London? What do you see when you step outside and you look at Birmingham and you look at Manchester, Newcastle, Leicester? What do you see? Because you clearly aren't seeing the same thing the rest of the country is seeing.
What would it take to rebuild that trust, if it's possible to rebuild it?
Oh boy, I don't even know if at this point you just need someone just to stick to their word and just kind of like stick to their word and not be gallivanting outside of their job doing nonsense. And you just kind of want someone that is just trustworthy, that is action based as well as emotion led. So I mean, the head and the heart can work together. Like we can. You can be compassionate about what's happening to the people and then enforce policy that affects that compassionate behavior. I don't actually understand why it's so difficult. And I think that what I'm seeing a lot of the time is economy over people. It's money over people. And there's no point if people are out there giving you and creating money for you. So treat people better. I think that would just probably be the first thing. Treat people better.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Do you think it's just a lack of accountability? I think that's a big part of it.
There's a lack of accountability. Yeah, people aren't. They either are being held accountable, but they're not listening to it.
Yeah.
Or there is just nobody there to hold them accountable because these are just the things that are done. These are just the things that are done, and like people are afraid of change, right? And challenging power. And which is fine. I mean, I get that. But I'm also just like, well, at the same time, how is anything ever going to get done then? It just won't. It really won't.
Do you see that responsibility falling on your shoulders?
On who? Me?
Yeah.
I am way too tired. I am beat down for checking. Not very beat down. I don't know. I've never been one to kind of like. I have opinions on these things, but I'm also very aware that a lot of people are human, and there's things. I'm always aware that there's things that people that we just don't see as regular people. You know what I mean? We don't know who's holding a knife to our leader's throat. when he's trying to not want to sign them bills, you know what I mean? You don't know who's doing it. You don't know what's going on. We've all seen House of Cards. We've all seen how how people can be railroaded into something without really knowing what it is. We don't know. I mean, but I come from the opinion of just, I don't know. I'm not the world's expert on any of these things. All I know is that there are people out there suffering, and if you can do your absolute best and be seen and shown to do your absolute best to alleviate that suffering, then yeah. I say absolute best, I mean absolute best, not just, we tried, that wasn't the case. I mean, absolutely trying, looking at the issue, making that change different, and then looking at the result and seeing if that made a difference. If that doesn't, you go back to the drawing board.
I mean, as a creator for yourself, that could be the way you channel your creativity in the future. You never know. Your conversations on your podcasts, your books, could be a force for change.
Could be. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. That would be a conversation to have on the podcast. That would be a conversation to have in the book.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I'm really holding out for a future that I can be proud of.
I think you're starting in the right way with all the conversations you're having, and you've mentioned a wide variety of topics here. And if anyone listening, if they wanted to take something away where they go and have a conversation with someone else, whether it's a friend, peer, colleague, what would you encourage them to talk about?
Talk about what matters. Talk about the things talk about the difficult things. Talk about the things that that you want to talk about, but you've been avoiding for like the vast majority of your life. Talk about why there are homeless people on the street, or talk about why people treat queer people in particular ways. Talk about why people treat Black people in particular ways. Talk about why people treat brown people in particular ways. Talk about things. Just have a conversation. Like, be open to listening and be open to understanding. Yeah, and use that space to kind of just read and use that space to grow. Use it as an opportunity to grow into in something that you don't really understand, or kind of like really learn something. I think that's an important. That's the point of a conversation, is to take something away at the end of it and have it either change you or determine you to do something about what you've learned. Not everything has to be a debate. No one has to win. No one has to lose. It's literally, what can you both learn, or what can the group of people learn from this conversation that we're having, and what can we take away from it? And that's what I would just say, encourage everyone to have conversations around those things that you can learn better, get to know people better. Yeah.
Amazing. Before we wrap up, as a you're not only an avid writer, but you're an avid reader as well. Mm-hmm. You've got your own reading list on Amazon, which people can check out.
Yeah.
What are some of the books that have changed your life?
It's so funny because I asked a similar question on my podcast, and I'm always like, why don't people just know and just say what they're going to say? And I'm like, here looking at my bookshelf, thinking, I don't know what I'm going to say. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara is one of the books that really changed me. For anybody who's not read it, it's an 800-page book, so that's the first thing. Like, you just know what you're going into. But it's a book about four friends, and about particular elements in their life across 40 years. So it goes from when they are just graduates up to around when they're around 60, 65. And it really gets to the core of what life is and how intense life can get, in both the good times, the really bad times, the good times again, the really bad times. It's a really like economic graph, recession and boom graph. And but it's a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. It changed me. It broke my heart in several pieces, but it got me really thinking about the nature of people and how we survive with one another together. I am currently reading a book called Manifesto for a Moral Revolution by Jacqueline Novogratz. And it's a conversation around how we can use capitalism to better the planet rather than consistently take resources from it. How we can use a business that can both make money but also invest in lower income communities in order for them to better their lives and come out of those spaces better prepared and better resourced and better educated to then be able to live a life of reasonable standard in the world. Because I'm personally of the opinion that nobody should be in poverty and nobody should be unable to get access to any of human rights resources, clean water, heating, clothes, food. For me, those are just like the basics, and a positive and clean environment. Those are the things for me that I think that at the very base level, that's what people should have, shelter. But this is a really interesting book because it just talks about how she built her company, which funds microfinance businesses to kind of fund like small businesses in Asia, in Africa, in South America, and help them make money, but also do it in an ethical way. I think it's a really good book, and I think that people should go out and get that if they just want to get a perspective on, we have this idea like, as I said, it's economy over people. This is very much people and the economy can definitely work together. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It's not either or, it's both and. So, those are the two I'm reading right now. And I'll say there's a third book I would say I've read in the past few weeks. It's called Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Sonnet. So she's a writer who writes essays around environment and feminist issues. And it's one of the best books I read this year. Like, it's not long, it's around 120 pages, but it's one of the best books I read this year because in all the work that I do with regards to masculinity, men's mental health, there's no point in any of that if we don't understand the fundamentals of feminism and domestic violence and feminist issues. There's no point. They work together. And this is what a lot of people don't seem to understand when we're talking about masculinity and mental health and well-being and all this stuff. We don't understand that the core of that journey and of those conversations and of that fight is feminism. We can't have the conversation if we don't know where they're coming from. And this is what I always think about. And this is what I remember standing there, I was like, why aren't there any books on men? Why aren't there any books on, like, we've got so many books on feminism and things, and like, well, why aren't there any books on masculinity and where's that? And I was so misguided. I was like, they're just that a lot of men aren't reading the feminist texts. They're not reading them, because if you were reading the feminist text, you would know that within that is the masculinity question. And that's where I'd say for any man to start, really and truly.
What is that question? Just for clarity.
What, the feminist question?
The masculinity question.
The masculinity question.
Yeah.
Where it comes from, what it is, why it is where it is today. Why is it a crisis, quote unquote? The wider issues of masculinity and the trouble that we have in it. You know, we're talking about things that, you know, when we're talking about things like, oh, men don't show their emotion, men don't feel, men don't talk about their stuff. And a lot of the time it's women trying to get this out of men, do you know? It's all there. It's all there in conversations with bell hooks. It's all there in conversations with Rebecca Sonnet. It's all there in those in Roxane Gay, understanding rape culture, all of this stuff. We have work to do, man. Men have work to do. And it's about being courageous and really stepping up and saying, look, we need to get it together so we can sort all of this out now. Can't have one person saying one thing, another person saying another thing, and then it all being disjointed. Like, we literally have so much to do.
Can you explain the link about feminism again a little bit more?
Okay. So, for example, feminism is essentially looks at patriarchy as a way that kind of deconstructs and controls the way that we act in society today, right? And as the real core tenets of feminism is that everybody, equality for everybody. Yeah. Now, when we understand from the perspective of women what they are experiencing and what their life and what you know, domestic violence, rape culture, all of this stuff that does affect men as well. But when we're looking at that perspective, we can look close and really look and see where the issue is with the way that men are considering these topics as well. And it's been there. It's been in a lot of these texts. It's been in a lot of the way that when we're addressing issues of the patriarchy, addressing issues of white supremacy, addressing issues of all of that, we are looking at a body of attitudes and behaviors that are being passed down to boys and girls in order for them to reenact those same behaviors as they age and as they grow through. When we look at masculinity and we think to ourselves, okay, what is the masculine? And we look at ourselves, what is the feminine? They are both, every person has both masculine and feminine energy and feminine essences. It doesn't help nor work when the masculine essence is quelled in girls and feminine people, and the feminine essence is quelled in men or masculine people. Make any sense? So when they've got all this happening, when people are saying, you know, things like, oh, man up, and things like real men do this or real men do that, it's because they are really trying to stray away from the feminine. They're trying to really make sure that they're trying to tell you in the society that anything feminine, woman, is bad. When we understand that, and we understand where that comes from, and we understand what that means, we understand how that looks in society, how that then steers domestic violence, how that then steers the way that boys treat girls and objectify them, and how we objectify a lot of different things, how rape culture is so prevalent that that there's just general fear in the way people walk around, because they don't know how people are going to react, or men feel that they are deserving of, you know, or straight men feel that they're deserving of women's bodies and whatnot, and sex itself, and how sex is used as a power tool. That all comes from that is all there, and that has all been there in feminist literature. But that's all masculinity topics as well. So these are the conversations that men should be having, and a lot of men are having them. I'm not saying that no men are, but I'm just saying that when we're having these conversations, men need to look at the feminist texts and feminism and the feminists, and listen to women about what's going on, because I believe personally that will then make us better men to women, to humanity, and we can find a way to work together to the end of this stuff. I'm still on the journey of learning a lot of it. I'm still on the journey of reading and understanding and knowing and having conversations and picking up ideas and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. And I'm in that space. I'm just happy that I'm able to kind of have those conversations. And I'm open to being corrected and being checked and being like, all right, so this is not like how I thought it would be. Okay, cool. So where do we go from here? Like, what is the next step? That's where I'm at.
Very interesting.
So many different conversations to be had on that. But yeah,
very interesting. I've not actually heard that perspective of looking into the feminist text or looking at female essays and
all there.
It's all there. And guiding the masculinity talk from that.
It's the same way that racism is not our problem. It is not our problem. We did not wake up tens of hundred thousands how many years ago and say we are gonna, we want to be the dominant race. So therefore we need to do this, and then enforce it systematically across it's not us. It's really not us. But the way to combat that is, and when the Black Lives Matter stuff happened, and people were saying, and a lot of Black people were saying that there were all these white people saying, oh, what can I do? What can I do? Are there books I can read? Are there films I can watch? And I'm just like, they're there. They've been there for all this time. Go and read it. Go and look at it. I'm not going to sit there and give you and do all the emotional work for you in explaining to you the trauma or the issue and whatnot. I don't expect women to sit there and explain to me the intricacies of sexism and heterosexism and misogynoir and misogyny and all that stuff. I don't expect that to happen. I am aware that it's there. I listen to what I need to listen to, and I go and look for the things that will kind of then help me read. The most I would say is this author someone you rate as an X, Y, and Z? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, I'm reading that. Let me read it. I remember walking down the street, and I was walking down the street. I was in the tube reading a Bell Hooks book, and she's a prominent feminist writer, and then some woman stopped me in the street, in the tube, and she was like, well done for doing that. And I'm just like, I don't need your cookies. I don't need it. Like, I'm reading this because I know I can do better in particular ways, but I don't need you to praise me in doing that. So what does that do for me? That doesn't do anything for me. Like, why do you feel the need? You know what I'm saying? It's just really, when you see white people reading while I'm talking to white people about race, I'm gonna look at it and be like, cool, you're reading that. Good. Yeah. I'm not gonna be like, well done for reading that book. Well done, you did well. It's the same way. In all these power structures, we need to really look at who these things are for and who they're written for, and and work accordingly. Racism is not the job of people of color. Sexism is not the job of women to fix. They will write from their experiences. They will write what they have experienced, and it's for us as men in this context to read the stuff so that we can make the change. That's just the way I look at it. That's just my perspective. If people want to disagree, they can disagree. But that's how I operate in life, That's how I will endeavor to continue to operate. So
amazing. Yeah. If people wanted to hear more about these insights, where can they find more about you?
Instagram at Alex Reads. You can go on and you can definitely subscribe and listen to my podcast, because I have all these conversations with people.
Tell us a bit more about the podcast.
The podcast is called Time to Talk with Alex Reads, and it's where I have and hold wholehearted and courageous conversations with people about anything, any particular space in their life. I've had Your Good Self on there twice, and I have mental health conversations, so conversations about where people are at and kind of figuring out how to deal with particular issues. So I do have therapists come on and talk about mental health issues, and kind of explaining things like anxiety and PTSD and all of these different terminologies that a lot of people hear but don't necessarily know what they're about. But also I have conversations with people just about their works, their art, their creations, their businesses, their stories, their journeys. And it's just a space for people to talk about the issues that they talk about. And it also is a place for me to satisfy my curiosity about things too. So I would say have a listen. You can have a listen on any platform, any podcast platform. But you can also listen to you can also go to alexreads.co.uk, and there's a lot of information there too.
That's not the outro for this podcast, by the way.
I was just like, where did that come from? But you can find me. Just find me there in those places, and obviously let me know that you're listening, and I'd love to just hear from you and connect with you.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put all the links in the show notes for you to go check it out.
Amazing. Thank you.
Check out Alex's work. Any parting words for the listeners?
Don't be afraid to do the work. And that goes for everything that you stand for, my gosh, with regards to RNT Fitness. But it also goes towards wanting to learn better and do better and know better and be better and do all these different things. Don't be afraid to do the work. It's hard. Don't be afraid. There's people out there that will support you.
Thank you so much for being here today on this episode of RNT Fitness Radio. I'd love for you to do a quick little favor for us. Please head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, leave a comment, and share it with your family and friends. If you're interested in learning more about how to transform your body and positively change your life, go to www.rntfitness.com and explore all our free content on offer. Thank you.